Hello and welcome. I am so glad that you decided to spend the next few moments with me. My name is Dr. Alyssa Jean, and you have clicked on How to Celebrate Haitian History and Culture in Your Classroom. I'm so excited to share with you today my passion, what it is that I am passionate about, what it is that I've come to learn about my own people that I wasn't given the opportunity as a child to learn. And so I'm glad that we have this chance to spend these next few moments together to break down some of the stereotypes and discover new ways that we can be responsive to Haitian students in the classroom. So let's jump right in.
So I'm excited to share with you a little bit about myself. My name is Alyssa. I was born in Miami, Florida. I am a second generation Haitian American and I love all things Haiti. I've been privileged to write a children's book called A Time to Remember, a Haitian American bedtime story, which incorporates both English and Haitian Creole through rhyme. And I've written a song and recorded it with my daughters, and it's called Anu Kembe. That's the song that you're hearing in the background. And so I've had the privilege of creating content for the past 2 years about Haitian culture, and it has been the joy of my life. But I have to say, this was not always my story.
You see, I grew up in a time when there were very few favorable mentions of Haiti in the news. My people traversed the seas on overcrowded boats in search of freedom and asylum, and by U.S. law were being turned away. The tagline I remembered the most was Haiti, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. And that was something that was repeated over and over again. This, along with horror stories from the island, criminalized my own people in my psyche and caused a shame and disassociation with Haiti, the language, and ancestral traditions. But as we have come to learn through diversity trainings, that when only one viewpoint is shown of a people, especially a negative portrayal, it tends to dehumanize them, and that was a direct result of mainstream Western media and propaganda. And so I attended the 25th Annual African and African American Summer Institute that featured Haitian culture and language, and it completely inspired me. I began to self-evaluate and see how I had allowed the fears of my youth to hinder me from connecting to my people, to my cultural roots. And so I embarked on a journey to present a more comprehensive view of Haiti to my own children and invited other families to do the same. And that organization is called Haitian Preservation. But you are here at this very conference to learn and grow and to become inspired as well, so that you can determine how to make students within your classroom feel welcomed, feel appreciated, and feel understood for being who they are. I wanted to create a presentation that would help educators to see the value in changing their ideas on a group of people and understanding how those play in our day-to-day interactions. So here's how we can celebrate. Through the following activities, we will discover how to become more culturally responsive in our classroom environments. We will do 3 separate activities, and through these activities, we will expand our understanding of what it means to acknowledge and celebrate Haitian history and culture in the classroom. Audre Lorde says, "It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences." So on to our first activity, true or false. Ways to learn more. So what I will do is I will say a series of statements, and I would love for you to think of an answer, and then we will review it together. Sound good? Let's get started. Creole is not a language, true or false? The answer is perspective. From a cultural perspective, Haitian Creole, or Creole Haitian, is a language. It is spoken by over 80% of the population. in the country and in the diaspora. From a Eurocentric or Western point of view, Creole would be considered a dialect. Here's some history. In the 17th and 18th centuries on sugarcane plantations, Africans that were enslaved mixed their native tongues with that of their French colonizers. This in turn created a freedom language, one which helped them to accomplish their goals. If you are interested in learning Haitian Creole, there are many free resources available. Moving right along. Haitian voodoo is devil worship. And the answer is, you guessed it, perspective. And I would like to add that if you feel fear or a negative emotion when you even hear the word voodoo, that is a direct result of propaganda. Voodoo or voodoo was introduced to the American psyche in the 1930s and 40s. The first representation of voodoo in film was in White Zombie, where a white Haitian voodoo master used his sinister knowledge of spells and potions to transform a young woman into a zombie. Now, this negative representation of voodoo in film draws on a long history of religious and racial persecution. Here's some history. Many of the Africans that were taken from modern-day Ghana, Nigeria, Benin, just to name a few, brought their African traditions to the island of Haiti. In order to bind the mind of the slave, the colonizers forbade any indigenous worship. According to John Mason, author of Black Gods, Orisha Studies in the New World, adherents do not believe in the devil because their ancestral West African belief system is not derived from a dualistic theory, good versus evil or God versus the devil, but instead from a cosmological philosophy dealing with the nature of the universe. So ancestor veneration, or honoring the ancestors, was a common practice used by African people, including the Haitian population. One very important event that happened in the beginning of the Haitian Revolution was the ceremony at Bois Caïman. This was a voodoo ritual that was done in an alligator swamp in order to call on the ancestors for help in their battle for freedom. If you would like to learn more about the Haitian Revolution, please check out our videos on Haitian preservation called Our Origin Story for more information. You all are doing fantastic. Let's move on to our last one. Haiti is the home of the eighth wonder of the world. True or false? And the answer is perspective. The Citadel La Ferrière is also known simply as the Citadel, was built by many former African slaves to secure Haiti's newly formed state after the independence of 1804. It is referred to by the locals as the eighth wonder of the world because this massive stone construction is the largest fortress in the Americas. Thank you so much for participating in our first activity, True or False. I hope you learned a little bit about Haitian history and culture. For our next activity, Find the Beauty, we will need a pen and paper, and we are going to spend some time looking at 3 photographs of Haiti and Haitian culture. And I would like you to just write down adjectives, one word, that come to mind when you see the picture, and see if you can find ways to appreciate only when you're writing down your words, okay? Let's get started. Great. So here are some of the words that I came up with when I saw these pictures. Remember our quote from Audre Lorde that it is not our differences that divide us, but it's our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. So by participating in this activity with me, you were able to exercise how to celebrate differences just by simply looking for ways to appreciate instead of ways to judge. Great job, guys. Let's move on to our last activity. The connection effect. Ways to build relationships. Now, this last activity is going to be a reflective one. So it will be helpful to have a pen and paper ready so that we can take some time to think about how we can build relationships in our classroom. So what is the connection effect? Essentially, it's the combination of these three concepts: having a knowledge, an appreciation, and therefore a relationship. When these three concepts are built on top of each other, we can see how students will respond in a more positive relationship towards us. So here are some of the questions that we can explore together. Under knowledge, what would I like to learn more about? And this is not just about historical information, but what would I like to learn more about when it comes to the students that are inside of my classroom? Under appreciation, what can I do to show my gratitude for the differences in my classroom? And for relationships, what is one thing I can do to make my students feel welcomed? Now feel free to press pause so that you can spend some time thinking about these three concepts. And I'll play some nice thinking music to get you started. When we're done, we'll reflect together. I hope this reflection activity was helpful to get you started brainstorming on ways that you can approach your classroom environment and your classroom culture for the new school year. So let's review, okay? What are some of the three ways that we can celebrate? So for one, learn more. There are tons of resources. I've listed some that I have, and there are many others who are passionate like me about this topic. Take some time to learn more for yourself. This is not necessarily for your students and trying to teach them. Sometimes we want to jump the gun and teach something that we just heard. Take some time to digest it for yourself before you share any information with your students. Then appreciate. It's just that simple. When we appreciate, we open up pathways and doorways that allow our students to feel welcomed, to feel connected, to feel like they belong. And then of course, we need to know our students. There's no way for us to truly have a classroom that is culturally responsive without building authentic, healthy relationships. So right now, let's all say this quote together aloud so that it can ignite in our mind the passion and the fire to celebrate the students that are within our classroom. It is time for Alyssa to teach young people early on that in diversity there is beauty and there is strength. We all should know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry, and we must understand that all the threads of that tapestry are equal in value, no matter their color. So again, I am incredibly grateful that you decided to click on this presentation. If you have any questions, you can find me at Haitian Preservation on IG, Facebook, YouTube, and also if you'd like to email me, please, and find out any of the sources that I've used. I will be more than gladly to share with you some of the resources that I've been able to create. So I'm wishing you all the best, and I hope that you were inspired to do something different, to do something bold, to do something incredible for your students by taking the time to celebrate Haitian students, Haitian culture in your classroom. Bye-bye.